Today on the Nerdy Gritty, Vertigo is releasing a comic about the second coming of Jesus Christ. As pastors, how do Des and Fox feel about it?
Hey guys, welcome back to the Nerdy Gritty, where we delve deep into the details of pop culture. I am Des.
And I'm Fox.
Hey, Fox, have you heard the news? Dead or Alive 6 is coming out in not too long.
Finally!
And they are saying, you know what? Maybe it's time that we kind of calm down on our sexist and sexualized ways. Dead or Alive has announced that they are reducing the jiggle physics in Dead or Alive. This is a real thing. Their characters look exactly the same.
Yeah, sure.
Exactly the same.
They just don't jiggle as much.
But this is the news of the Dead or Alive creators that they wanted to release. We live in a day and age I'm not quoting right now. Sure. Essentially saying, hey, we live in a day and age when this is really not okay anymore, you know? So jiggle physics, not so much there anymore. That's this is the smallest concession.
Well, here's
it's
the
like
thing.
you're the fastest person in the paraplegic race.
Here's the thing. I don't know if I have a problem with Dead or Alive and its character models or its jiggle physics.
Okay.
I don't play it. It's not.
Right.
It's of no interest to me.
Right.
But also, what is the inherent problem with it?
It is treating the women as objectifying the women and having you enjoy the game.
Are you saying that
less
not every other fighting game has characters with unrealistic
To me, this
bodies?
is the difference between Gears of War or Battlefield and Hatred, the game. Are you saying that you don't go out and shoot and kill people, sometimes in anger, sometimes but yeah, of course we do that, but the heart behind it is the point. Hatred, the video game, was essentially a mass shooting simulator. It was a top-down kind of twin-stick shooter, but the whole idea, there was no game behind it. It was just mass shooting.
Okay,
and
if we're
so
going to
to
make
me,
that comparison, the difference is that one is depicting war, which is much easier to justify to a lot of people than somebody just getting angry and murdering people that they feel angry toward. There's a big difference there. And what we're saying here is that they're both they're fighting games. One of them has characters exclusively women with very unrealistic body proportions, as well as physics designed to draw attention to those body proportions. And the other one has some, and not all.
In those games,
they're all fighting games where they just fight
you
each other.
can't handle, and I mean this literally, you can't handle the jiggle physics. Dead or Alive has had a slider on how much you want things to jiggle before. The jiggle physics aren't just something in the game. In Soul Calibur 6, you and I played that.
You can create a character and adjust their proportions. You can change what they look like.
And you can make them look, but the physics will always be their physics. It doesn't matter. They have their physics set in stone. If you are playing Dead or Alive and you decide to yourself, these women are not jiggling enough for my taste, you can go in and change that.
Right. You can. You have the option. Why is that inherently I can see some people being offended, but also people can be offended by Soul Calibur.
Right.
So
to me, again,
the game is not about women being used as objects. It's about women who look a certain way doing the same thing that characters in another game look a certain way.
Maybe we should pause and talk about this later because I actually have a lot and we should probably get a woman in on that conversation. Look, you don't want to have a conversation with a woman here.
No, I would love to. I'm just saying that women obviously don't know as much as men. And so
well, guys, thanks for listening. Remember,
this is the final episode.
Okay. Fox, what have you been up to, sir? Shut up. I'm going to go first.
You know what? No, stop. We need to talk about this more.
So Punisher Season 2 recently came out.
I forgot that it came out. I haven't watched it
yet. Came out. Because of that, I remembered that I was halfway through Daredevil Season 3, and I finally went back and finished Daredevil Season 3. Okay. And I got to say, man, I am shocked they canceled that show. Luke Cage Season 2 is disappointing. It starts out okay, pretty good, and then it kind of peters off toward the end there. Jessica Jones season 2 is fantastic. I think. I know some people didn't like
Some
it as
people
much,
didn't
but
enjoy it.
I loved season 2 of Jessica Jones.
Yeah.
But Daredevil season 3 was better than Daredevil season 2 in my opinion.
Wow.
Daredevil season 2 really went into the mystic, magical, Black Hand,
A little bit, yeah.
ninjas. You know, what's her name? Elektra is.
Yeah, and it had that whole like side story, like their history. And
Yeah.
it was like, okay.
And so, I mean, it was good. It was a good season. This one gets back to kind of that first season. It's real life stuff. And real
Don't give
things
me any
going
real
on.
spoilers,
Yeah.
but tell me, how much of a role does
Kingpin,
Kingpin play?
a very, very large one.
Good. Anyway,
So yeah. Anyway, it's really good, and I really liked it. And I've talked a lot, and we've talked a lot about how what the Marvel TV shows do really well, other than Iron Fist, is taking their comic book stuff but dealing with real world issues
A little bit,
through
yeah,
them.
yeah.
And I said moral neutrality is kind of the first season of Daredevil. Like,
Sure.
when is it okay to do that stuff? And season 2 with Punisher is a little bit more of that. When is it okay to cross the line? And
right.
this one is, what do you do when you lose hope? And that's really the idea of
You
it.
mean
Is
season 3 of Daredevil?
season 3 of Daredevil,
Okay.
yeah, is what do you do when you lose hope? And what do you do when you don't care about the line anymore? How about you, man? What have you been up to?
Like I said, playing Odyssey again. That game is so good. Because every reason. No, it's just I have been realizing how well they've the feedback loop. There are a lot of like moons, the power moons. There in the game there are literally like 900 or something like that.
That is a
a
lot.
ridiculous amount of them. But they make it so that your skill level is generally not super important, because there's a lot where they're literally just like, hey, it's right there, pick it up, like jump and pick it up now. There are others where, wow, this platforming is very difficult.
Yeah.
And like, so they did a good job where you don't need to feel, you don't need to be great, but also if you are great, then you still get rewarded sometimes. So that's been fun.
We've also been watching season 4 of Sherlock finally.
Oh, it was the most disappointing season of all time.
It's
Not of all time, of that show for sure.
it's good, and I'm enjoying it.
It was
They're
fine.
clearly focusing more on the characters than the mysteries.
Yes.
And it gets weird for it.
Yes. I finished the story of Just Cause 4.
Nice. Have you finished the story of Dragon Quest yet?
No. This Saturday, I'm planning on doing that. Look, we have other jobs and other things going on in our
We
lives.
do have other jobs. Yes.
Anyway.
Speaking of those other jobs, hey, can we get down to the nerdy gritty now?
Fine, yes, let's do it.
Well, guys, so we're getting down to the nerdy gritty,
We are. We're doing that officially right now.
and we're doing
Wait
this
for it, wait.
because
Now we're down.
okay. Oh, I got nerdy gritty all over me now.
Oh, yeah, gross.
Coming out recently, Vertigo Comics announced they're releasing a comic called Second Coming.
Let's just say recently is subjective. It's been a few months.
Since they announced
There's
it?
an article that I'm reading here with the author about that. That came out in August.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
But
okay.
still, it's recently and it has not yet come out.
Yeah, it hasn't come
as
out
far
yet.
as I know.
But
Let me make sure.
the purpose of this comic, kind of what they're going to be doing, is that Jesus, when their premise is that when Jesus came to Earth, his goal was to kind of make things better, but he was crucified and died and then rose again and ascended into heaven and didn't actually get a chance to succeed. And now the Earth is in such a bad state and Christians are doing so poor at their job that Jesus is coming back to Earth to try again. He had failed his first
Yeah,
time,
it doesn't
and
come out
now
till March. Okay.
and now he's coming back to try
Right.
again. And he is coming back, and he encounters Sunman, who's essentially Superman.
Yeah, a ripoff of Superman.
Yeah, well,
Or a parody of
a
Superman.
parody of Superman. I mean, it's
Not a ripoff, it's DC property.
Yeah, DC owns Vertigo, so
Right.
this is. But so it's basically Superman and Superman's or Sunman's punching strategy and Jesus's strat. But in all of this, we figured this out because we are, of course, part of pastoral groups and church
Sure.
things like that on Facebook. Because again, I am a youth pastor. Fox is a small group pastors. We are pastors at a local church here, and when we saw it, it was an outrage. It was
There was a post that was angry about it.
Right, right. So how we found out about it was because of outrage from some people. And so the question came to me, how do we feel about this? So
Right.
I'm just going to toss it to you first, Fox. What were your first thoughts when
Well-
this came out?
My first thought was, without knowing anything about it, like, I need to know some context. Because, I mean, Jesus, it's not the first time Jesus has been brought up
Right.
in even comic books or pop culture in a way that's not apparently entirely accurate to what Christian theology would say.
Right.
So the first thing I needed to do was get some context here. And so I looked up, there's an interview with Mark Russell, who is the author. This is the one I was reading. Mark Russell is the author of the comic is called Second Coming, from bleedingcool.com. And essentially the idea that he talks about is that, the conceit of the book is that Jesus comes back, becomes roommates with Sunman.
Oh, the roommates. I didn't know
Yes.
that.
Yeah, it's just to be clear, it's supposed to be a comedy. It's
Oh,
not
okay.
a serious book about Jesus and the fight against darkness. It's
Well,
a comedy.
I thought it was going to be like a serious look into the morality of superheroism.
Now, what the idea is, but it's told in a comic way, but the basic idea is that, like, how both of them, in their ways of defeating evil or fighting against bad, according to the author, both of them don't have all of the answers.
Right.
That Sunman, sure, he can punch things, but 99.9% of Earth's problems are not aliens
That need
in
punching.
this world.
Yeah.
It's like the idea. It's why Superman's dad dying of a heart attack is such a big deal, because it should show
He can't punch a
Clark
heart attack.
Kent that he can't do everything. He
Yeah.
can't stop a heart attack, even if he punches it.
Or
hard
in
as
this
he can.
case, can't save his dad from a tornado.
Right, impossible for him to do that. Oh, that was the worst. Anyway, so but things like that, where Superman, we're gonna use Superman and Sunman in probably
Nope. Sunman.
no well, okay.
Exclusively. You can't get it wrong
Sunman,
ever again.
But think Superman, that's even what they've said.
Right.
That Sunman, with all of his nigh immortality and invincibility and super strength and speed, can't stop poverty just by punching it. Like, he could help.
Depends on how many
things.
people he punches.
If he just punches all the homeless people to death
And murders
there
them
aren't
all.
any homeless people
There you
anymore.
go, right?
Come on, Superman, what are you doing, man?
Just get all the homeless together and throw them into the sun.
I've been saying we should do that for years.
Don't do that.
Come on, SpaceX.
These are people. Yeah, come on, SpaceX.
What do you do? Fix the real problem here. No, so that he can't do that. And here's where I think the rub is for Christians who may be offended by this, is that it's also stating that Jesus's way of doing things, or the Christian ethos,
Right.
as depicted by Christians today, also doesn't have all of the answers. Now, we haven't read this. It's not even out yet, so we have to state that.
Right.
We can't definitively say this comic is wrong in what it's stating. But it's an interesting idea, and we also, there's already been a response to it by the Christian community.
Right.
And so, so after learning about that context, okay, if it comes out and it's bad, then it's just a bad comic. Who cares? And if it's good, then it's a good comic. I'm okay with personally separating the actual historical Jesus and the actual theology of Christianity from a comic book version of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And so I personally, that's cool. Vertigo, you do what you want.
And see, that's actually where my issue is right there.
Okay.
I'm torn on this whole thing because I have some this is good, some that's like, this is really bad. But kind of what you're saying right there is I am okay, and I agree with you. I'm okay with separating the actual historical Jesus and actual literal Christian theology
Right.
with this, comic book version. We are. Not everybody will be.
Sure.
There will be a lot of people that read this and they're going to think to themselves, that is exactly what it would be like. Or this is exactly what Jesus
That's
is
a good
like.
point, yeah.
There are going to be people out there that are going to read that and they're never ever going to think to look a second. Remember when freaking Da Vinci Code came out and everyone was like, that's real!
Yeah.
This is reality!
People believe that Dan Brown was like
a historian, some
historian and
Illuminati
not just doing
historian.
research for a novel he was writing.
Right, and like nobody decided to take a second look and try and actually think about this a little bit more.
Despite all the millions of Bible study curriculum that came out.
They took this almost literally as
Yes.
gospel.
Yes.
And in this situation, I worry that there will be a lot of people that do the exact same thing that read this. And for example, like just putting Jesus in a fictional sense, there's a manga called Saint Young Men that I've read a couple issues of, and it's goofy and it's funny, but the whole idea is Buddha and Jesus get an apartment together in Japan. And
All right.
it is a 100% comedy, slice
Sure.
of life manga.
Sure.
And it's goofy and it's funny. I'm not into slice of life comics, the manga, so I didn't keep reading it or whatever. But I had no personal issues with it because I know that if people are going to read that, they will read that and know, but this is not the real Jesus.
Right.
Nor is that the real Buddha.
Hopefully.
This is yeah, hopefully. Obviously, this is a joke.
Yeah.
But I think there are going to be people that are going to read this. And again, if we're assuming what the comics are going to be like
yes,
here,
we are
obviously.
assuming.
But in our assumptions, I think there's a very strong possibility that people could read this and think to themselves that this is a good depiction of the historical Jesus.
Yeah, well, yeah. Or at least it's reinforcing their worldview that they already have, that Christians are bad.
Right.
That Christianity is a bad thing.
It is a failure or
that
whatever.
It is that we have failed as Christians because the world has evils. And sometimes people who claim to be Christians are the cause of those evils.
Yeah,
That,
absolutely.
Which is a thing. That's a
Right.
thing. People who claim to be Christians use that to perpetuate evil. Politicians, I could name names right now. I don't post very often politically on social media, although I want to more often because I get upset about things. But I have recently, and it was just about just very blatant, two-faced, like using Christianity to justify evil things, and then also claiming that we can't, as a secular nation, rely on Christianity to do. It's just like, come on, man. But anyway, yeah,
and that's where I think this comic is probably going to get something right, in as much as there is a standard that Jesus has set and calls from us.
Sure.
And I firmly believe, and I think I'd make a very strong case for, he is 100% right. I 100% believe, and to my core, that if we all lived as Jesus did and did exactly what Jesus said, that would be perfect.
Yes.
Jesus was perfect and lived a perfect life and set a perfect example. But what I wholeheartedly agree with is that Christians are failing in that.
Right.
In a lot of ways, or at least Christians, and mostly in a lot of ways people who claim to be Christians but are not, we're falling drastically short. The amount of people out there that claim Christianity and then use Christianity as a reason to say we're a Christian nation, so get the Mexicans out. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, that doesn't make sense
That
at
is
all.
That doesn't make any sense.
It's
like
contradictory.
antithetical
Yes, exactly.
to the core. Yeah.
And so Christians are failing in a lot of ways, and people who claim to be Christians are failing in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But attributing that to Jesus, saying that he
Yes.
failed, that's where my struggle comes in.
That's where a huge problem for me comes in, is that the conceit is that God the Father, I believe is what, I don't know if that's the term they use, but it's what by
we'll use.
Christianity terminology, God the Father, when Jesus came back, considered Jesus a failure because he was only there for 33 years and then got crucified, and that means he didn't do good. They caught him real quick and they killed him for it. And that's like my main problem is that you're coming at this whole idea from a flawed understanding of
Yes.
what you're trying to claim.
Yes.
That, okay, I'm not trying here to like I'm perfectly fine with talking to you about Jesus, our dear audience. I'm perfectly fine preaching the gospel to you. That's what I do. That's what I believe you should know. But the core understanding, the core like gospel narrative is that Jesus came to earth specifically to die. Like
Right.
that is why he was here. Everything else was important. He was here to teach us moral living. He was here to display what the actual like method of what the method of a Christian should be as far goes as like living with other people who do not believe the same thing.
Right.
But all of it was leading up to, and the most important part of it was that he was going to be crucified and then raised from the dead and go up to heaven. Like the fact saying that he died so early by what some arbitrary standard, I don't know what makes that
quote
early
unquote,
or not.
he lived like 33,
He's 33 years. I don't know what makes that early or late, but saying that he died and so therefore was a failure is, again, antithetical to the core Christian belief that that's what he was supposed to be doing.
Yes.
That makes him a, like, success, and then the fact that if we're going by Christian doctrine, the fact that he rose from the dead makes him even more successful. Like he succeeded in exactly what he was supposed to do. And so that's where my main rub comes from, is that you are theologically incorrect with your premise for your comic book.
Yes.
So I'm okay with you talking about how Christians have failed. That's true. I'm upset about that too.
Yeah.
Not about Christians failing morally, because that's also core to the belief system of Christianity, but like the idea that we use Christianity and we use the image of Jesus for more for personal reasons, or for more than what it's supposed to be used for.
Right. Yeah,
I'm
it's
okay
not
with-
just that Christians are failing at the
Yes.
morals we've set for ourselves, but that in some ways many of us are using Christianity as the reason that we're failing.
You know what?
at
I'm just
our
going to
moral-
say it. I'm just going to say it. It's the fact that Jeff Sessions would quote Romans 13 to justify the act of caging babies.
Yes.
Like literally putting babies in cages, because that verse says it is good for men to, or good to follow laws, quote unquote. Paraphrasing there.
Yeah.
That right there is what, like, that's enrages me to my core. That is the
Yeah,
thing that
absolutely.
I posted about.
That
And
is
so I'm
an
okay
insane
with,
failure.
I'm okay with Vertigo and Mark Russell talking about that. That is something that should be talked about.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, but you're coming at it from a direction of, well, Jesus himself was a failure, and it's also a big part of my problem too is that it seems as though he's just saying that all Christians are failures in what they do. That it's kind of ignoring everything good that people do in the name of Christianity.
Right.
I would say there's, I don't have statistics, and I might just be being optimistic because I'm a Christian, but I would say that happens more often than people doing evil.
There are a lot of statistics that aren't named. Things like people who claim Christianity as their primary religion also donate the most money to charities.
Sure, and
People who claim
here's-
Christianity as primary religion adopt the most people. Yes, we are effective in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and to me, that's all not super important. Like, it's not about how good we are.
Right.
Again, that's really against the idea. Like, us adopting more children than others does not change our relationship to God. What changes our relationship to God is a belief that Jesus is, like, Christian doctrine here is that we believe in Jesus, not
Right.
that we adopt people or that we give to charity.
Well, we treat people as Jesus should, though.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right. Though that comes as a result of our relationship with God.
Right.
It's not the reason why we go to heaven.
Right. Yes. Absolutely.
Right, and
Yeah.
so-
the reason we go to heaven is because we admit our
Right.
weakness and ask Jesus
And
for
now those good
forgiveness,
things
yes.
should be they should be a necessary byproduct of that belief.
Correct.
But yeah, so that's my main, like, there's a point in it's like this article.
Actually, see, that's a really great point, because let's go back again to the
Sure.
core of the gospel here.
Yes.
The core of the gospel is that we as Christians, or as humans, are failures. We have failed. We
Yes.
have moral failures, so objective moral failures. And we need to make up for those failures. But we can never pay that price.
Right.
We have failed so horribly and miserably that there is no way that we can make that up. There is no amount of good that we can do to make up for the evil that we have caused in the world.
Right.
But
That is standard belief.
correct. But instead, Jesus came and paid that price.
Sure.
He offered his body as a sacrifice, saying, this is the price, and therefore, if you accept my forgiveness and you believe in my forgiveness, you receive that forgiveness, and you are forgiven of your failures. Therefore, all of the fact saying that Christians are failing, yeah, we know. We know for a fact we're
Right,
failing or we're
right.
struggle. Jesus also failed. No, that can't be the case.
Yes.
We can't say that.
Not according to Christian doctrine.
Right. We cannot say that Jesus failed or Christianity doesn't exist. If we say that Jesus failed, then there is no forgiveness from him.
Right.
And therefore, there's no such thing as Christianity. We're all just still Jews.
Right.
We're all very misled Jews at that point,
Yes.
you know? He can't be the Messiah. He can't be the Christ if he failed. And so in this mindset, again, that's just a genuine core to the gospel thing that ruins this comic's premise.
Right.
Or the premise ruins the gospel. And again, it's so hard for me to accept that people may read this and let this be added to their worldview of who Jesus is.
Right. It's just adding to the idea that the core concept of Christianity is moral goodness.
Right.
And that is not true.
Yes.
It is
not at all.
It is not true. It is Gandhi or Mother Teresa did good things, but that whether or not that's not core to whether or not they go to heaven. That's not the important part. And
Yeah.
so this is.
So if you guys aren't understanding this, let me just explain this one direct thing.
Yes.
Core to the Christian gospel is you can't be good enough to get into heaven.
Yes.
There is no earning your way into heaven.
You can. Yes.
So that's called like a moral therapeutic deism or works-based righteousness, and the Bible specifically says that's not the point. So I know it's pretty common in the world today for people to think, I'm a good person, I'm going to get into heaven, or that's a bad person. That's not the way the gospel works. Not at all. So from the Bible, from a Christian standpoint, that is not the way the gospel works. We should try to be good people, to be more like Jesus. But the gospel is that we are not good enough, and we need Jesus to complete us. We
Yes.
need Jesus to
Right.
complete us. So, again, that ultimate failing of this comic is that point right there, that Jesus can't have failed. Otherwise, otherwise he's not the Christ anymore.
Right. So there's more in this interview, and he talks about some things that make me more interested in reading it.
Right.
They have.
Yeah, I do want to get to the pros of it, though, because I have good thoughts about it. Why I think this might be okay.
Oh, sure.
But you go ahead.
Yeah, no, they have him. Let's see. The question is, how the name Jesus means different things to different people. What's your approach to him? There's something. They have him more, quote unquote. They have him more as mascot on T-shirts. This is him talking about modern Christians.
Right.
Have him more as mascot on T-shirts to prove they're on a winning team. Second Coming is about Jesus coming down and being appalled by what he sees has been done in the name of Christianity in the last 2,000 years. He goes by a megachurch, and they have a billboard of this Tom Brady-looking Jesus Christ throwing a football, and he doesn't even recognize himself, which is a metaphor by him not recognizing what's been done with religion. But yeah, we get that. Part of me just feels like this is going to be so on the nose. It's not even going to be interesting.
Yeah.
Like, that makes me not want to read it. Not for any reason like I'm offended, but just like, okay, we get it, man.
That's why when this comes out, Detroit should be. In fact, Detroit Become Human will have just ended yesterday while you're listening to this.
Yeah.
If you're listening to this when this releases, Marcus's story fell kind of flat for me, and I think you kind of agreed
100%.
because it was so on the nose.
He was Robo Jesus.
Yeah, I really liked Connor's story. I really liked Kara's story, but Marcus's story, especially watching it that third time through, just falls flat because it's so on the nose.
Yeah, and so, I mean, part of me agrees, like, Jesus would not be cool with a lot of things that Christians do.
Absolutely.
Despite the fact that they call themselves Christians. Sure, that's fair. It's fair to talk about. It's fair to talk about all of this. But just write a better, like, I haven't read the story. It just feels like it's going to be reinforcing a flawed worldview. I'm not saying a bad world. I'm just saying one that's fundamentally flawed by a misunderstanding. And also, I get it. Like, I get the story from that sentence right there.
Now, they could do a lot of good things with this as well, though.
Sure.
For all we know, they're gonna come out and it's going to be this twist in which this isn't actually Jesus, or maybe this is Jesus, but he's trying to teach us a lesson or whatever. I don't know. They could be doing a real big twist or something like that, so we don't know for sure.
Yes.
But here's what I do like about it, and what I some of the things that I'm like, you know what, I could also be okay with this is people who love comics are going to be talking about Jesus now.
Sure, yeah, 100%. This could be a door for people.
And just the ability for people to read that and then say, man, did you hear about that Jesus comic? Or, oh, did you see this Jesus comic? And just to be talking to people about it and having that conversation, making people think and talk about Jesus. Hopefully people are then going to go read things, see reactions.
What did
Hopefully
you like
people
about
are going
it?
to
Why
learn.
didn't you like it? What was the problem with what you... Yeah, like this could be a doorway for conversations that would never have happened because they're taking the step of putting Jesus in a Vertigo comic book.
Right. Before this, without this, Jesus wouldn't be on the mind at all.
Right.
And now they're reading, and now he's on their mind. And
Right.
to me, that's a good thing.
To me, that justifies everything. Like, I mean, don't intentionally make stuff up about like be wrong about Jesus just so you get people talking. But if this is going to be a thing, then use that to your advantage.
Right.
Da Vinci Code did the same exact thing.
Got a lot
Where
of
it's
people
like
talking.
people
and
started
thinking,
talking about Jesus, and unfortunately, we had to start from a place of, that's wrong, right? That
fiction.
you understand.
You picked up that book in the
Leonardo
fiction
da Vinci was real bad at theology. He depicted the Last Supper being in an open air second floor piazza in the Italian countryside.
Also, everyone was white.
Everyone's white and on one side of the table.
Yeah, everyone's on one side of the
I don't really
table.
understand. Like he wasn't there. I understand that he didn't need to be for your understanding of like, oh, there's this whole conspiracy. But also, this person sitting next to him having long red hair doesn't inherently make him a woman.
Yes.
There's some sexism going on here. Where,
Yeah.
Oh, that character looks like has long red hair, so clearly it's a whore.
Yeah.
Mary Magdalene.
Yeah.
And they have a child. No, that's not. And so I think the same conversation might be coming in. This comic book talks about, okay. So you're telling me you're getting your theology from a comic book about Jesus living with Sunman, a superhero.
One thing that is also on a different note, kind of bothering me about this, and this is, I don't know if it's fair to say that it is bothering me, but it might just be my personal, like, whatever that's going on there. But if this were Muhammad, if this were Allah, if this were even like Buddha and they tried to do this, this would not fly.
Yeah, the whole idea of like an edgy comic about Jesus, it's not really that edgy anymore. Like,
Right.
They've chosen a religion that's based entirely on forgiveness and grace to make fun of, which is like, wait a minute. Like, and so that's actually, you're bringing up an idea here that I think we should get into. Let's talk to how we as Christians should respond to something like this.
Okay, so I think I can do a real short version of if you're not a Christian, how should you respond to this?
Sure.
Read it.
Read it. Yeah.
Hey guys,
absolutely.
go read it, and just read it with having in the mindset this is a fictional depiction of Jesus.
Right.
This may be, they may put in things that are 100% entirely and completely false. So make sure you fact check anything that hits you.
Like anything.
Yeah.
Literally anything. Don't just take it at face value.
Right. Like anything that you're like, oh, that seems interesting. Fact check it first,
Yeah.
just
Yeah,
in
yeah,
case. But we as Christians, how should we respond to this? I'll say first and foremost, I don't think protesting it or like
It's not
trying to
gonna do
raise
anything.
some sort of huge
You think you're going to stop
boycott.
Vertigo from releasing a comic?
No, you're going to help it more than
Yeah,
anything
this
else.
is
Yeah, it's free
controversy.
free
There's a little bit of
publicity.
controversy in here.
No, I would say that we as Christians, first and foremost, the most important thing that we need to do, educate yourself about who Jesus is.
Yes.
I think a huge problem that we would have and that a lot of people are going to have is having outrage at this and saying Jesus wouldn't be like this because, and then listing off all these things and half of them aren't going to be true. Like, I'm assuming what's in the comic, but, Jesus spends all these time with the homeless people, letting them have whatever they want. Jesus wouldn't do that. Jesus would tell them to get a job. Like, no, he wouldn't. He literally helped
he's
the
done this
homeless.
before.
Exactly. Like, there might be people that go out there and try and have an outrage about this, and like, sure, okay, you might be offended, you might have outrage. That's fine. Temper it and make sure.
Focus it into a constructive.
Yeah, focus on something
conversation
constructive.
about
In fact, we just read in Ephesians, one of our studies in the youth group that I teach, Ephesians 4, it says, "In your anger, do not sin."
Right.
You can be angry.
Anger's fine.
That's fine. Just don't sin.
Use it for good.
Yeah, do
Yeah.
something smart with that anger.
Yeah.
So temper that anger into something constructive, and please educate yourself about who Jesus is, because if you're going to complain about somebody falsely depicting Jesus,
You better be
you
prepared
better
to,
know who Jesus
to
is.
correctly depict Jesus.
Exactly. Yes.
I want to bring up a line that's from a fairly popular movie in Christian circles. God's Not Dead. It's one of the propaganda movies that we talked about
Yep.
in that episode a few months back. There's a line in that. The main character, at one point, I might be misquoting, but I'm pretty close at least. He says, "I feel like God needs me to defend him." He doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to. God does not need a defender. Jesus does not need you to speak up in defense of him. His truth and his the Bible will remain the same. The gospel remains the same despite a 6-issue comic book coming out in 2018 saying some possibly false things.
2019.
Or making some false Oh, right, it's 2019 now. Become the monster. Frankenstein teen. You don't need to. This isn't going to ruin Christianity. This isn't the end of things. And we often
By a long shot.
We often like to bring some of the controversy to our own attention, like bring it so that people like, I'm super offended by this and I'm outraged that this shouldn't be a thing because why? Why not? Like
Well, a lot of times people just like to draw attention to themselves.
Exactly.
Like, I'm the one who
Sure.
shared this. Give me all the attention.
Right. But this is not going to affect Christianity in any way. You know what will? How you treat people who have a different opinion on you based on this comic.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point, that you could do as much, if not more, damage to the gospel with
Right.
how you react to this than the comic itself.
Yes.
And your anger and your sinful anger at a lot of points can be vastly more dangerous than a comic book.
Yeah, we should at some point. I've been torn on whether or not I want to read this. Like, mostly it's just another comic book for me to buy, and I already buy too many comic books, and this is not one that's like interesting enough for me to want.
You said it's a 6-issue one?
It's a 6-issue arc.
I'll pick it up.
It's not one I can put it on my subscription list and you get a discount. But
Yeah, and I'll pay you back.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we should definitely read it to get on. If we're going to talk about this much, we should read it and then do a follow up and be like, you know what? Actually, it was better than we thought.
That's a good idea.
That'd be great. We should do that. But yeah, just like educate yourself both on what it says. Actually, don't just take a interview like we're doing right now, or a headline, or somebody's Facebook post about how they're offended and take it as gospel. We recently were in a conversation with somebody about current political situations, or not current political situations, about the Gillette ad.
Oh, yeah.
That came out that people were offended by, and this person was upset about it. And when both of us asked
Why?
asked
Like,
that
what?
person,
Again,
what about
with a gentle, like, hey, man,
I
why?
straight up asked, "Oh, what about it offends you?" And he said he hadn't watched it, and he was upset by somebody else's reaction video that they put on YouTube.
Right.
And it ended the conversation. I just did not continue the conversation because why would I talk to somebody who is not? And so, that being said, read this if you're going to be talking about it. If you want to bring it up, if you want people to be educated about it, you need to be educated about it too.
Absolutely.
Don't just allow somebody's reaction to
And
be
if you
yours.
don't want to support it, if that it's to that point,
Sure.
hey, at least look up like a synopsis
Yeah,
or
Wikipedia
something
will
like
have
that.
a synopsis.
Yeah.
I understand not wanting to give them your money. That's perfectly valid.
Yeah.
That's part of where I
understand.
am.
Yeah.
But yeah. So just have some temperance about it.
Absolutely.
Recognize what your actions can do.
I would also say be ready for dialogue.
Oh, sure.
Like, don't just
Yeah.
rage at people.
Right.
Talk to them about that. And talk to them kindly with love. Again, know that your acceptance of conversation is going to make them more willing to learn about the real Jesus than you raging at them. That's
Right.
only going to enforce their stereotypes. And so be ready for dialogue. Talk to people. Again, that's something else that scripture says, is that all the word of God, or all scripture is God breathed and useful for teaching, preaching, and like having a dialogue.
Always be ready to have an answer for those just be willing to talk about it.
Yeah.
And when people have questions, or even are slinging insults at you because this, like, I don't know, let them do it and then respond in kind. Like, not respond in kind, respond kindly. Respond.
Yeah. Not respond in kind.
Dump some
respond with kindness.
Dump some hot ashes on their head, some hot coals, and
Yeah, and these aren't just our ideas. Like, we're referencing scripture with all of these things,
Yes,
like paraphrasing scripture. So, well, guys, thank you so much for listening. Thank you to each and every one of you guys for your support. Always remember that if you would like to hear the extended version of this podcast, we give patrons the ability to listen to the unedited versions.
A few more minutes longer in there.
Yep. Let us know what you guys think about the comic beforehand, and if you happen to read it or read the synopsis, let us know what you think about the comic after the fact as well.
Comes out in 2 weeks, if I'm not. Or no, it comes
2
out at
months.
the beginning of March.
Oh, 5 weeks.
March 6th, I think. Yeah.
So 5 weeks.
Something like that.
So thank you guys for your support, and always remember that saved games save lives.
See you next week.